Hello friends, hello subscribers. We have a reoccurring guest on the channel here today with something unique that I'm sure you'll find of some significant interest. I'll introduce Doug, and he's going to briefly describe this interesting rifle from the 18th century. Is that right, or 19th century?
18th century, late 18th century, and it's a modern built clone of the Ferguson Breech loading flintlock rifle, model of 1776.
Interesting.
And there was only 100 of these rifles ever built. They were built as an experiment, and a special company of riflemen was created by Captain Patrick Ferguson of the 71st Regiment. And Patrick patented his breech loading flintlock, even though there were similar breech loading flintlocks built before that time. Patrick Ferguson's patents, I think, would refer to the breech plug lowering to the loading position with one full rotation.
I'll get you to repeat that for us. Just show us this function here. So this has a kind of a corkscrew mechanism, a threaded mechanism.
Yes, it loads through the top, and one full turn of the trigger guard opens the breech and allows a bullet to be inserted, about 65 caliber bullet, 645, inserted, and then powder applied, and the breech.
Would this be loose powder, or would this
You
be
could load loose or cartridge, and it's believed the riflemen used paper cartridges at that time, but you can load loose powder if you put a heavy service charge. It would begin to foul the breech block after a few shots, but if you kept it wiped out, you could load it at Patrick Ferguson up to 6 times a minute, and excess powder could be swept into the pan, and he could fire it up to 6 times a minute. Normally about 3 shots a minute was normal, so the design wasn't so much intended to speed up the reloading process as it was tactical, in that a rifleman could load the rifle from the prone position and fire it. He didn't have to stand up and expose himself to enemy fire.
So would this rifle predate percussion cap rifles? I see it as a flintlock.
Absolutely. This is a flintlock, and it required powder in the pan. There was a little longer flash hole on these, so you do notice a slight hesitation between the flash and the discharge of the rifle. But they were used with great effect at the Battle of Brandywine, when Patrick Ferguson's experimental company of riflemen, armed with this rifle, inflicted pretty severe damage on the American rebels. And they were led by the future Lieutenant Governor for Upper Canada and Ontario, John Graves Simcoe, who commanded the Queen's Rangers, which was a loyalist unit raised in North America to fight the Republican rebels.
So this was used by the British Empire forces then?
Yes, as an experimental rifle, and it had some issues that could never be resolved. And one of them was the fact that the breech was pierced by this block, and it weakened the stock through the center of the rifle to the point where the only 2 surviving examples show field repairs where the stocks were broken.
So that's quite a large mortise through the center of the stock for this threaded breech block.
Yeah, and so these rifles have that bit of delicacy to them, which is it's the bane of soldiers in the past. If you don't make them soldier-proof, they break them. There's only 2 examples of this original military issue surviving. They were all used up or lost in combat. Patrick Ferguson himself died at the Battle of Kings Mountain on October 7th, 1780, and he may have been armed with and had a few riflemen left with him. He'd been injured at Brandywine and had a bullet through the elbow, which crippled up his arm badly. And at Kings Mountain, he was shot out of the saddle by a Republican rebel. And he caught one boot in the stirrup, and his horse dragged him into the Republican rebel lines. And as they approached him, he drew a pistol and shot one of them. And so they all emptied on him, and his body was mutilated, and that was the end of Patrick Ferguson.
So is this a rifle or is this a smoothbore?
This is a rifle. Can I show you the muzzle?
Yes, of course, yes.
And and it's about 65 caliber. I can't recall what the twist is on it, but it certainly was significantly more accurate than any smoothbore at the time. And the other attraction to the Ferguson Breech loader was it could be fitted with a sword bayonet. And this bayonet was unique to the Ferguson Breech loader. It was a socket bayonet with a sword blade sharpened both sides, and it could be used for slashing as well as stabbing.
Oh,
so it's quite a formidable piece, and gave the rifleman the same reach as a Brown Bess.
I see.
So very distinctive weapon, and the British used the bayonet to great effect, as is well known. When they closed with the enemy, it was one advantage they had over Republican riflemen with American long rifles. They were often armed with a tomahawk, but they didn't have the advantage of the bayonet.
So this rifle, what would be the advantage of having this type of breech system as opposed to having a muzzle-loading rifle?
Again, not exposing yourself in the loading process.
So you
with the
could shoot-
conventional muzzle loader, you had to stand up and push the ball home on the charge.
So you could shoot and load from the prone position.
Yes, without showing yourself. So it gave you, made you fairly effective and reduced casualties. And again, they were used to great effect at probably Brandywine was the telling battle, and that was did not go well for the rebels.
Now you mentioned that you had a book with some greater detail on this firearm.
I do. It's got photographs of the only known 2 originals. This clone is marked D. Egg, London. He was one of the gun makers. It's also marked with Patrick Ferguson's initials that he viewed the rifle. There was a number of makers that produced the 100 experimental rifles that were issued to Patrick Ferguson's company of riflemen. But the book is well known by people that are interested in this subject, and it's put out by Mr. Mowbray with Man-at-Arms Publishing. And the author was DeWitt Bailey, and he did some wonderful research on the British military flintlock rifles in the period 1740 to 1840, which is about the end of the flintlock era, and they began to be replaced with percussion arms. And contrary to most popular belief, the British Army used rifles to good effect right up through the 18th and into the 19th century, but never adopted them in a huge way until the percussion ignition system came into play in the mini bullet.
Do you have any, can you recommend any pages that refer specifically to this firearm?
There's some photographs here in a section on the Ferguson breech loader, and this one is marked number 2. This clone is marked number 2 of 100. And this shows a photograph of the only intact original, and there's a lower or a less well-preserved example was recently identified. In fact, I think, bear with me here. Bear with me. There's a photograph There we go. There's a photograph of the second example, and there's a photograph of an excavated trigger guard from a Ferguson Breech loading rifle that was dug up in New York. That was the fate of most of these rifles. They were used up and lost again. So that's the reason. This clone was built by a dear friend of mine named Don. We'll just name him by his first name. And from parts I believe he got from the rifle shop, and he did the bulk of all the work to create this piece. So it's a lovely example of one of the rarest rifles in North American history.
Well, it's a remarkable piece, and I thank you very much for showcasing it briefly to us today. I wish we could go into more detail, but perhaps that's a video for another day.
Well, I'm still learning how to shoot this thing with some degree of finesse. I have a little tool, a piece of deer antler, to kind of seat the bullet forward in the chamber, and I've been experimenting a little bit with a few charges, and yeah, it's a fun rifle to shoot.
Well, that's awesome, Doug. Thank you so much for showcasing that, bringing it to our attention.
Yes, my Ferguson clone.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.